Welcome everybody, I'm Darren from Mountain Ascent Association. We're going to begin doing our free seminar tonight, live streaming on YouTube and Facebook on avalanche awareness. This seminar is to help you prepare for heading out into the backcountry in whatever mode you choose to go. I've got a couple different sections that will break this up into. And that would be the basics of avalanches, some demographics on fatalities, and then contributing factors. We'll talk about route finding, hazard avoidance, and some red flags, and then rescue and survival. And since we ran a little short on time due to some technical difficulties, we'll go all the way till 8 o'clock or thereunto. All right, so some things to start off with about avalanches. More than 200 people a year are caught in avalanches in the U.S., and more than 30 are killed. The number of avalanche casualties is rising steadily, but we'll talk about the demographics of that in a minute. Most of them are killed by asphyxiation, some by trauma. It's a little grisly. Survival rate for those who are buried is pretty low. If they're uncovered within 15 minutes, they stand a pretty good chance of survival. But other than that, it doesn't look so good. So one of the things that we'll want to talk about is avoidance. We'll focus on that tonight too. So here's some other interesting things about avalanches. You can see that the primary factors in fatal avalanches were actually the people that are out there. So we're the ones who are causing most of these to occur. They occur during or shortly after a storm. Vast majority of avalanches occur on slopes of 30 to 45 degrees. And one of the big flags to look for is that changes in air or snowpack temperatures cause changes in the snowpack, and often that causes decreasing stability over time. And this big black bolded statement at the bottom here, 93% of the time victims or a member of their party trigger the avalanche that buries or injures them. So tonight's purpose is to help you understand about how to recognize that terrain, avoid it, and if you were caught in one, a little bit about something you should do. I do want to say though, this is not an official nationally certified presentation we're doing tonight. This is just recreational enthusiasts pooling knowledge about avalanches, and I do recommend everyone takes a course from either Avalanche Institute of the American Institute of Avalanche Research and Education, which is ARI. We just have a course, a brand new course that we started for MAA only. It's a private course with Sierra Mountain Guides. We just opened up for February 23rd to the 25th. Registration open tonight, and we'll be announcing that tomorrow. You can find that on MAA International, or wherever you can take an avalanche course. So 3 things to look at. There are 3 origins of an avalanche. There's the terrain, the snow that sits on the terrain, and the trigger. So we have to ask ourselves things like, what is the slope? What is the aspect? What are the anchors that are holding it in place? As far as snow goes, we want to know, do we have wind slab? Do we have reek layers? Do we have rapid temperature changes? And then as far as triggers, again, that's us. So, sorry, I keep forgetting about that one. This is the slide we're on now. There are 2 main avalanche types, the loose snow avalanche, which is a point release, and the destructive slab avalanche. The difference between the two is really related to the type of snow that gets released. A loose snow avalanche can be rather small and are mostly consisting of powder that it can't up on a slope, and then releases catastrophically with large blocks, very heavy blocks, and then pounds everything in its way. And slab avalanches are the classic type that have a crown line across the top of the start zone. My presentation is not following me here. Okay, so a little bit about some of the anatomy of an avalanche. There are basically 3 different places, 3 different parts of an avalanche. One is the starting zone. That's where it's triggered, and then it propagates down through the track, which is the path that's followed. And then the deposition zone, or the run out, is where the debris ends up, and that's where usually a victim will be found. This is really interesting stuff for me, hopefully for you too. Let's look at the typical United States avalanche victim. Not surprisingly, 89% are men, most between the indestructible ages of 20 to 29. 40% are snowmobilers. 36% are skiers and boarders. 3/4 are experienced backcountry recreationalists. I have a breakdown of this by gender, the overwhelming percentage male. Also, U.S. avalanche fatalities by age. You'll notice that it's not just the invincible 20-year-olds, but a lot of people in their 30s also head out. That's probably not surprising because that's a very active age for most people to be out in the backcountry. Are snowmobilers, and so recently there's been an effort. So what that tells us is in glaciology and also in climbing about convex and concave. So if you think of something that's bowl-shaped like this, this would be called concave, like a cave, and then convex would be bubble-shaped, like your eye, okay? So if a slope is concave, shaped like a trough, then that would be an avalanche chute. And any place where snow can gather at a high mountain area and then funnel down, like at a piece of high terrain that comes down through couloir, that's particularly suspect. This picture here shows us an avalanche path that's wiped out the trees and the debris zone in the bottom. So that's another flag we can look for whether trees are present in suspect terrain that's shaped like a bowl. Another thing to look at is the weather. So we're going from terrain now to weather. Storms, 80% of avalanches occur during or shortly after storms. So one of the things that we use as a rule of thumb out there is 24 hours after a storm, we wait until before we go out, and sometimes 36 hours after a storm before we head out. Another thing is that any MPH over 15 will move a lot of snow and will load leeward slopes, so we need to avoid those. Temperature, snow remains unstable in cold temps. Let's think about that. The reason is that snow crystals remain intact. If it experiences warming and cooling, then the snow crystals will have a chance to bond with the crystals next to it. So we like to have temps around or below freezing so that the snow can consolidate. And anytime water is introduced into a snowpack, that's going to make it weak as well. Let's continue with snowpack. Recent avalanche activity is one of the best indicators of danger of slopes of similar aspect or angle. If you see evidence of wind loading, such as cornices, pillows, those are dangerous areas. Anytime you're traveling in snow and you hear a whumping or a hollow sound, that's a clue that there's an unstable layer. And even worse, a shooting crack if you're traveling on the snow and a crack emanates from your skis or boots. Probably accompanied by a whumph. Even in flat terrain, that's an indication that conditions for an avalanche are present. So what do we do with this sort of thing? One of the great things about the snowpack is that we can do some stability tests on it. One of the first things we can do is dig a snow pit. So we're going to dig into the pack and then look at the layers, how they're bonded to each other, and their cohesion. This is where an avalanche course would be particularly useful and where an online presentation really can't help you too much, although we'll look at them somewhat in a minute here. You want to dig it in a safe place, but it should have the same aspect, elevation, and slope as the slope you plan to travel on. You're going to brush your hand down through the layers and even do a shovel shear or a ski or a roosh block test to see under pressure how it fails and where it breaks at. Okay, and then lastly, people. Again, 90% of the time victims trigger the avalanche. One of the reasons why we need to check ourselves is because we often get overconfident, have somewhat fever and a high-risk attitude. I love this picture. Be aware, you can die. Backcountry access point. Attention. This is an avalanche zone. Often it turns out that people who take avalanche classes now feel ready to go into avalanche terrain, and they're quite often the victims. So just because we've gotten the information doesn't mean that we're now immune. You've got to use it. Make sure that the people you're traveling with have avalanche terrain knowledge and have been trained in avalanche skills. and try to be unattached from your goals of attaining the summit or skiing the Freshies. There's a lot of different things that contribute to it, such as not having the right equipment and traveling in too large of a group. Most of these are listed here. This is a good list. So let's look at these in particular. Some common decision-making mistakes. You may be more likely to take risks in terrain that you are familiar with. Check. So always look. Acceptance, approval from the group, pushing on because you do not want to go against the will of the group, even though things do not feel right, can lead to unnecessary risk. So, as they say in Star Wars, if you have a bad feeling about this, don't proceed. Overcommitment. You feel like you've invested so much that you just have to ski that slope, or you need to have the summit, but the Avalanche doesn't care about you or your training. It did not know you were an expert when it buried you. And then lastly, the expert halo. Just because someone's been there before or has had background education does not mean that they're going to be making the correct decision, so everyone should think for themselves. A few more. Existing tracks. An existing set of tracks can give you a false sense of security. That does not mean that the area is now safe, just because someone at one time did make it through there safely. It's very tempting to look at a slope you'd like to ski, and even though it's an avalanche terrain, just take the chance anyway. And again, it's easy to succumb to groupthink, so don't do that. Think for yourself. All right, primary human factors in fatal avalanches involving people with avalanche training. Number one thing, overconfidence. Secondly, attitude. Third, difficulties in group management, and then the others down here. All right, so now when that's in place, let's talk about some planning and route selection. Travel techniques. There are 4 things, the key of which is the terrain that you select to travel on. Okay? For one, check the avalanche forecast. Be prepared and have a plan. Make sure your team knows what they're doing. Make sure your group has the right skills and equipment. Make good terrain choices given the conditions, and use good travel technique. We'll discuss that in a second. So here's what forecasts look like. This is one from the Sierra Avalanche Center. There's also an avalanche center near Shasta, and there's the Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center as well. You can find all those online. It follows a color code from low through extreme, going essentially like a stoplight from green, yellow, orange, red to black. And the avalanche forecasters go out in the field and dig pits and then post their findings. They also report on avalanches that have happened, and it's interesting reading and also very informative. So it'll show not only the risk level, but also above and below tree line and related to different aspects. Most avalanches occur at the considerable level. Why is that? Let's think about this for a second. If you knew that the avalanche danger was high or extreme, you wouldn't go out. At considerable, you would think, and we all would think, okay, so it's out there, but I'm going to avoid it. So it's more likely to occur, and yet it's not enough to stop people. So when it's considerable and you're going out there, remember that's the time when a lot of them happen. 30% the level below that, which is moderate, and only 6% of them happen at low. Okay? So the forecast is only a starting point. You still have to make up your decision and decide exactly which terrain you're going to put your skis into out there. When we're traveling, we have a protocol. Let's go through this. Number one, never expose more than one person to danger at a time. So you're crossing an avalanche slope. You have people in safe zones on both sides who are ready to perform a rescue if possible, and only one person crosses it at a time. You need to stay well spread out if you have more than one on the slope. Sometimes that's necessary because it's so huge. Watch each other closely from a safe location. Avoid stopping in or beneath avalanche paths. Do not descend directly above a partner or another group. Stay alert to changing snow stability. Communicate with your group and prepare to do a rescue. Here's some of the exact things that we want you to do when you're traveling on the slopes. Put on gloves, goggles, zip up and tighten cuffs and collars. Keep your backpack on, but unfasten the straps so that you can shed it if necessary. Remove your lanyards and pull straps. Cross one at a time. And why are we doing all this? So that if we need to, we can swim through the snow. And if you must ascend or descend a questionable area, avoid multiple traverses of the slope. Instead, go straight up and straight down. Again, the best strategy for avalanche awareness is really avoidance. So let's look at some key things again for route selection. One, use the windward side of ridges. So if there's a cornice, okay, and the wind is blowing on this side, you want to stay the windward side of the cornice where the snow has been scoured and not wind loaded. You can use dense timber, ridges, and rock outcrops as islands of safety. This is one of a climber's favorite bag of tricks to avoid avalanches. You can also climb in areas that are steeper than the avalanche zone, which is another one that I like to use. Climb on slopes that are above 45 degrees. And of course, avoid terrain traps, which are things like avalanche zones and gullies and cliffs, run-out areas. But actually, there have been many instances of avalanches where people have even died in traveling in things like creek beds, okay, where the slopes are not that high on the sides. Let's look at some red flag warning signs if you're out there. Number one, again, recent avalanche activity. We have a picture here of a crown line, a fracture that propagated a slab avalanche. Slopes with similar characteristics are especially suspect. Another thing, the cracking or collapsing snowpack, the whoomphing sounds, the hollow drum-like sounds, or propagating cracks. If you see that, hear that, stop on your tracks and make an assessment right then, or go to a safe area so you can dig a pit. Another red flag warning sign, heavy rainfall or snowfall in the last 24 hours. Why is that a problem? Well, the snow is not yet consolidated. It hasn't bonded to the old snow there, and it hasn't adjusted to the additional weight. Another one is the wind blowing snow. Loading of leeward slopes is a problem. The formation of cornices and the creation of wind slabs can add to your danger as well. They can start an avalanche when they fail. Another red flag warning sign is significant warming or rapidly increasing temperatures, because this weakens the snowpack. Places that are under stress will begin to creep downhill and become less stable. New weak layers can form, and layers that were formerly bonded can come apart. Down at the bottom of this slide, you'll see here a very persistent and large depth hoar layer here, which is what we'd call a weak layer in the snowpack. This is a place where, with additional weight, you can see how that weak layer would crush, and then possibly the consolidated mass on top would slide on the bed surface. And that's why you want to dig a snow pit, to find where those layers are. In marine snowpack, like we have along the Pacific coast states, those are less likely. It's the cold and dry areas like Montana, Utah, and Colorado where they happen quite a bit more. But they're still likely, they could occur anywhere. Common trigger points, let's talk about some of the shapes of the snow and how it can affect where it starts. One particular thing to keep in mind is that convex areas of a slope are weaknesses. Areas with irregularities or protrusions or sparse trees or rocks. Below cliffs and below cornices, those are places of particular danger. Let's look at a picture of a mountain here. This is one with a widespread avalanche. Let's look at what's happening. For one, in this location, there's sparse trees. The slope angle is just about right. We have wind-deposited snow that broke on the windward side here, broke just after the cornice line, and propagated all the way across the top, went through the run-out zone. And interestingly, in this picture, you can see tracks of snowmobiles running through there. Slope angle is one of the things that's the most important and one of the more well-known aspects of avalanche assessment. If your slope approaches, it's 30 degrees, that's where it begins. If it's between 30 and 45, that's the big danger zone there, especially 35 itself. This is the angle that most ski areas have have their terrain at. So you can use an inclinometer on your compass, or you can use a slope meter. If you can begin to measure the slope along your pathway and notice that you're in that sort of terrain, then you can either go to shallower terrain or steeper terrain. And again, follow the trees and the rocks. Stay on the windward sides and be on ridges to avoid that sort of terrain. The aspect is another important part of it. So the summary of that would be wind-loaded slopes are normally on the north. Those are also the shadiest, the most loaded, they're also they receive the least amount of sun, the least amount of daylight, have the most snow, and then the eastern side is similar. In addition, the wind in the western United States often blows from the west or the south, so it'll tend to load those steep slopes. Some terrain traps that can increase the consequences of being caught in a slide are trees and rocks, and then of course a gulch itself. All right, so now we've talked about avalanche basics. We talked about some of the people that are caught in avalanches, some of the weather, terrain, snowpack, and gone through those in some detail. Let's talk a little bit about some of the tools that we'll need to have. One is a probe. So this is a long metal rod that folds out. These can be carried independently, or they can be inside of a pole. You need a shovel. A metal one is best. A transceiver, which is both a transmitter and a receiver, hence the name, so it can send and receive signal. And an inclinometer, some again built into compasses. Then your brain, the most important part of this, becoming ARI certified and practicing regularly. The reason for this is so that in the event of rescue that you can execute effectively and help save a life. Some other things that you could carry on yourself to better your odds if you were ever to be caught in an avalanche is some interesting equipment that's been developed in recent years, like the Avalanche, which allows you to breathe air from the snowpack. And those are built into backpacks now, as well as a flotation system that actually deploys to keep you floating in the pack. And then lastly, this thing called Reco, which is a little thing about this big, which is in some clothing. I have a few climbing pants with that in it. And it helps find your body in the avalanche. That's about all it's good for. It's not the same as a beacon. All right, so what to do? Let's say that you are on the slope and against all of your training and best guesses and so on, you begin to get caught in an avalanche. First thing is to shout. Close your mouth so you don't so you don't get snow in your mouth, because you're going to asphyxiate. Keep your backpack on to help protect your spine, increase flotation. Get rid of your skis if you can. They'll drag you down. Stay on the surface or to the side and swim as hard as you can. If you can, grab a tree, bush, or a rock, do that. Just before you come to a stop, try to make an air pocket around yourself, or get a hand up so that someone can see you. And conserve your energy and oxygen and wait for assistance and pray. Here's the graph to back up the statement. Every minute counts in avalanche burial. You can last for a while, but after about 30 to 40 minutes, your chances of surviving really dive. The first 15 minutes is the critical time frame when we need to get people out, especially if there's no breathable air there. And so the team that's with you is going to be the rescue team. They've got to do it. We can't call in for this. Survival versus burial depth. Burial depth of 1 foot. Survival chance 90%. Decreasing above 4 feet, it gets a little bit worse. Number of victims buried, most of them are somewhere between 2 to 6 feet. And chances of being dug out vary on how fast your team can get to you and how fast they can dig. Some research that's been done recently on the last avalanche course that I took suggested that having strategic digging training is just as important as having beacon training. because the average person can't dig very fast or very long. So we have to dig in a way that we can maximize retrieving the victim without and minimizing moving snow more than once. So to do that, you need to dig in kind of a stepped fashion and not just go for it. Many search and rescue organizations and ours, we would like to do this too at some point, and guide services, and even the classes that you take in area and the National Ski Patrol, they'll have you practice pulling a victim out of finding and pulling a victim out. So what to do? First of all, appoint a leader, get organized, make sure that nobody else is going to get trapped in another avalanche by rushing out into the debris zone. Go to the last seen area and keep your shovels and probes ready to deploy. Ensure all the beacons that are searching have now been switched to search mode. A lot of time has been wasted with people still on transmitting. So imagine that happens. So you've got a buried person transmitting and you've got rescuers all on search, except for one rescuer who's on transmit. So every time that rescuer who's on transmit moves, the other people who are searching for them get confused signals. So make sure that happens. Make sure everyone switches to search mode. Get a plan and get going. Oh, some of this stuff is fairly complicated, and because of our time constrictions, I'm just going to kind of breeze through it because it is also tough to deliver an online presentation. But there's a bunch of different ways to search for people. The most common is to do a beacon search, and there's a couple different ways to do this. With the new beacons that have been developed, you can pretty much walk straight to the person in kind of an arc. You will first search in a wide area and then turn your beacon down, or it'll automatically go down to search a smaller area and then a fine search. You can also use probing. I think that'll be coming up in a second. Okay. Once you find the person, you're going to need to use a probe pole or a probe itself. Once you find the area that the person is in, you're going to use a probe pole to search around and make sure that you can find them. So begin in a start place and then expand from there, okay, in an ever-widening circle. Or you can mark it off in a grid and go for it with a bunch of different people. Probably starting uphill is best, and then moving downhill in a straight line would be the way to go best. Looking for clues like gloves or to ski. Okay. You can find people without beacons. It would be difficult, but if you have enough people with probes, then chances are that they could make it. Another thing you can do is go to spot probing, which is going to places where they're likely to have been collected, where their equipment's sticking out, or where trees might have caught them, or they might be stuck on the back of a rock. That's another strategy. And like it says here, there's many different ways of organizing probe lines. So I think what we should do is probably present the rest of this in another follow-up seminar that we'd have the time to actually go through this in a little more detail. Okay, getting the victim out. When you make a strike, leave the probe in place, note the depth of the strike, and begin digging 1.5 times that distance down slope. The reason is we want to move the slope. We don't want to start digging right where they're at. This is the strategic digging thing I was talking about. We want to move the slope away first so that we have a place to put the snow when we can extricate it. Dig furiously and rotate every 60 seconds with a fresh digger. Others who are not doing that should be moving the dug snow out of the way to prepare a platform. Okay? When you reach them, you're going to need to provide first aid. This is a little graphic that's telling us what's going on here. If you have multiple rescuers, 2 should begin shoveling just downhill of the probe. Others should begin shoveling downhill of them. That's the 1.5 times thing, following those guidelines. So you're preparing a place to dump the snow that's being pulled out from the victim. I like this this page here, I'm going to linger on this a minute. So in summary, for avalanche awareness, number one, check the avalanche forecast before you go. Nothing's more important than the information. Understanding the roles of slope, aspect, and weather is key. Again, those would be the angle of the slope, the aspect, the orientation, and then whether it's been snowing recently, whether it's been warming up or cooling, okay? And then the general terrain, the general weather patterns that have been occurring. That's what I meant to say. Know how to travel using the safest terrain, ridges, windward slopes, steeper than 45 degrees. Learn how to evaluate weak layers in the snowpack by taking a class and getting out there and digging that pit yourself. Having those avalanche tools and knowing how to use them. And best of all, the survival technique is avoidance. And just simply stay off of avalanche terrain. I have a couple additional resources for you to look at tonight. So here's the Avalanche Forecast websites, SierraAvalancheCenter.org. Eastern Sierra Avalanche Center and the Shasta Avalanche Center are also great places to look up information for those particular areas. There's many different websites, one of which the Forest Service is a great one. Another one would be the American Institute for Avalanche Research and Education, which is AIRE. I also mentioned in passing that National Ski Patrol also provides avalanche training. There are some great books. One that's been used for many years is a book called Snow Sense, and I have a couple copies of that, and I've loved reading that one. Staying Alive in Avalanche Terrain by Bruce Temper was a book we used to get a lot of the information you heard tonight, and the Avalanche Handbook is another one. I just want to mention also that our retail partner can sell you gear here is Bobcats Outdoor Adventure Sports. If you're a full member, you get 25% off everything all the time there, and they have many different brands to choose from. In the shop I'm broadcasting live from tonight, they have avalanche probes and shovels. Thank you everybody for being a part of Mountain Ascent. Thank you for attending this seminar tonight, and thanks for bearing with our technical difficulties. This is the last night we'll be broadcasting from our location in Sacramento. Next month, when you tune in, we should be at a new facility in McClellan, and we'll have room for over 100 people. We'd love to have you join us in person at that time, and look forward to climbing with you and seeing you in the new year. Take care.